Walls are going up and walls are coming down. So now Washington, D.C. just doesn't look to be the kind of place it looked like when I worked there many years ago as a policy analyst in the Reagan administration. It was an open place. You could walk around. You could take pictures and you'd have the White House right behind you. You'd have the Capitol right behind you, but not now. Now there are tall fences. There's barbed wire. There is military and police everywhere. So the Capitol is becoming, you could almost say, an armed camp. Here's a report from the Capitol Police Chief, Pittman, and he goes, I can say unequivocally that vast improvements to the physical security infrastructure must be made to include permanent fencing and the availability of ready backup forces in close proximity to the Capitol. So this is not temporary. This is not to meet one incident. This is forever. We have a 3.2-mile barrier with razor wire and 7,000 troops currently in the Capitol. Now, what I find interesting is that while all this security is going up here, on the other side, at the U.S. border, circling the country, you may say the fences are coming down. And what I mean is that Biden has signed an executive order stopping the wall. No more wall. And no more wall basically means no wall at all. Why? Because half a wall is kind of like having no wall. It's obviously easy to just walk right around it, get right past it. Now, why the security at the Capitol? Why the fences? Why the walls? Nancy Pelosi gave her reason.
I do believe, and I have said this all along, that we will probably need a supplemental for more security for members when the enemy is within the House of Representatives.
So according to Pelosi, she has to protect against the enemy within. And the enemy within, according to her, isn't just Trump supporters. It's also Trump allies in Congress. She's worried about Congress people posing a threat to the Congress itself. So evidently the walls are intended for members as well as for ordinary U.S. citizens. Bottom line, the Democrats and the left in the Congress feels threatened, and they believe they really need a wall. But if they really need a wall, and if walls promote security, why not a wall around the United States? Don't the American people need protection? Don't they need a wall from people just storming in, not just people looking for work, but people looking to commit crimes, MS-13, gang members, bad guys, drug smugglers, and so on? Now, for really all 4 years of Trump, we kept hearing that walls don't work. No, Dinesh, Robert Frost, something there is that doesn't love a wall. And I have right in front of me this Frost poem, which really is about the deep ambivalence that people have about walls in general. In the poem, you have a guy who is building a wall, and his neighbor comes up to him and kind of starts railing about the wall and saying things like, we don't need walls, and walls are only meant to divide and keep us apart, and so on. And the grumpy neighbor who's building the wall just keeps saying one thing. He keeps saying, and he says it more than once, good fences make good neighbors. In other words, what he's saying is that far from undermining friendliness among neighbors, walls are essential. So you know what's yours, I know what's mine. There are certain lines, not that we can't cross them, but we cross them with consent before stepping onto, let's say, somebody else's property. We need to play by the rules. And when we look abroad, we know that walls have a mixed significance. Well, what about the Berlin Wall, Dinesh? Are you trying to build a Berlin Wall around the United States? No. The Berlin Wall was intended to keep people in Berlin, in other words, in communist East Germany, from getting out. The wall around the United States is to prevent aliens, people who are not citizens, from sneaking their way in and breaking their way in and breaking the law and jumping the line over immigrants from faraway countries who can't just swim the Rio Grande or scale a wall and get to the United States. So the wall is intended to enforce fair rules. I was at Stanford University giving a talk some years ago, and of course the Stanford leftists were all over me like, Dinesh, we don't need a wall around the United States. Look at Stanford. What an open campus this is. You can walk all around Palo Alto. People don't have to be Stanford students. They can come right onto the Stanford Green and walk around. Notice we don't have a wall. To which I replied, well, actually you do. You have a wall. And it's actually bigger than any wall that Trump could even aspire to build. It's a wall in your admissions office. You restrict who gets to get into Stanford. And you jealously guard that wall. In fact, I said, to my knowledge, not in the entire history of Stanford has anyone ever scaled that wall, by which I mean sneaked into Stanford as a legitimate student, attended classes and received credits, and graduated from Stanford, you may say, quote, illegally. That has never happened, which means they have a wall that no one can climb. And they jealously guard that wall so that the privileges of a Stanford degree are restricted to people that the admissions office has given their consent to. Now, where am I going with all this? Where I'm going is this. There's obviously a massive double standard in building a huge wall around the Capitol while taking the wall down around the country. And that really tells you who the political class cares about and whom they want to protect. So whom do they want to protect? Themselves. From whom? From you. You're the domestic enemy. You're the enemy within. You're whom Nancy Pelosi is referring to. You're the danger to the United States. So it's American citizens who pose a clear and present danger, and we need high walls and barbed wire and guns and troops to keep them out. Who's not a danger? Illegals. Who's not worthy of protection? The American people. Because the American people don't need a wall around their collective home, the United States. Why? Because the Democrats have their own political motives for letting people in. They want new voters. They want to change, you may almost say, the demographics, or even some people say the DNA of this country. They ultimately want to shift the balance of power so that they have, in effect, a one-party state. So walls are working for them in Washington, D.C., and the absence of a wall is also working for them politically around the country.